Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Green Business Fund webinar, during which we will introduce the Green Business Fund programme, look at some of the key services that we offer through Green Business Fund, and also run through some case study examples of businesses that we've supported already to reduce the energy costs at their sites. Just to flag first of all, so this webinar actually forms part of a series of webinars that we've delivered through Green Business Fund, all of which can be found on the Carbon Trust website. And these cover a range of different topics, so some fairly technical and some less so, but all areas that are hopefully relevant to SMEs. On the Carbon Trust website, there are also various guides, again, to technologies or just different areas that we've made available through Green Business Fund. So I'd also suggest having a look at those. To introduce myself briefly, so my name, as I said, is Graham Hunter. I'm an associate within the business services team at the Carbon Trust. So my background is mainly in building and process energy use. And I tend to work with both large and smaller organisations to try and help them to reduce their energy use. So that's normally as a member of the technical delivery team, which I've been working with for about the past 3 years now. Susan also mentioned that we will be taking questions. So please, as we go along, do feel free to type in any questions that you think of. And as I say, we'll see if we can have a bit of a Q&A session at the end, just to run through any of those that come through. So a brief agenda for today's session. First, we'll start with an introduction to the Carbon Trust and look at the aims of this morning's webinar. Then we'll run through the various services that we are able to offer to SMEs through the Green Business Fund and look at the criteria for those. Next, we'll have a look at 6 case study examples of businesses that we've supported through Green Business Fund to reduce their energy costs. And finally, we'll just have a brief look at a couple of other schemes that may be of interest to businesses before, as I say, having a quick Q&A session at the end. So first of all, for anyone who's maybe not familiar with the Carbon Trust, just a quick introduction. So we have been around since 2001, and we are a not-for-profit organisation with a mission to accelerate the move to a sustainable low-carbon economy. We are independent experts on carbon reduction and resource efficiency, and any surpluses from group commercial activities are always reinvested back into that mission. So we have a head office in the UK, which is in London. We also have 3 regional offices in the UK, so one in Belfast, Cardiff, and Edinburgh, where I'm based myself. We also have an office in mainland Europe, in Amsterdam, and then we have a number of offices worldwide as well. So we're based in South Africa, Mexico, Brazil, China, and the US as well. And there are essentially 3 elements to the work that we do. So those being advice, where we advise businesses, governments, and the public sector on the various opportunities that are available to them. We also undertake footprinting, where we measure and certify the environmental footprint of organizations, products, or even services that they offer. And we also help to develop and deploy low carbon technologies and solutions through a number of different programs. So those are the 3 elements to what we do. Green Business Fund, which we are delivering this webinar through, would fall under the advice element of that work. And the aim of today's session really is, first of all, just to introduce the Green Business Fund programme and the various services that we can offer to SMEs through that programme. And then also just to share some case study examples of businesses that we have already supported through the scheme, and have a look at what we've helped them to implement and what types of savings they are looking at. But just to start with, it's probably worth asking the question of why, first of all, businesses would look to invest in energy efficiency. So for larger organizations, that tends to be partly down to regulation, also partly down to them wanting to actually reduce the environmental footprint of that business. With SMEs, however, what we tend to find more often than not is that the key motivation tends to be trying to reduce running costs. And dependent on the sector that you're in, we generally find that energy costs can be anywhere really between sort of 10 to 20% of the overall running costs of the business. Some sectors that can actually be up to 30%. So for example, where we look at the sports and leisure sector, typically we're seeing that on those sites, the energy spend is actually a lot higher than maybe we would typically expect it to be for a business. At the same time, however, through carrying out site visits and energy audits, what we also find is that those running costs really don't need to be that high, and that there are actually quite a lot of opportunities available to businesses, often with some capital investment, to try and reduce that percentage of the running costs that's associated with the energy costs. Which obviously creates opportunity then if we are able to reduce that 10 to 30% energy cost that the business is having to make, then what other opportunities are available if we can free up the capital that's currently being spent on energy. So as I say, the first thing that we will do is just run through the key services that we are able to offer through the Green Business Fund scheme. And Green Business Fund is, so as I say, is a program that we have been operating since early 2016. It's available to small to medium-sized businesses, schools, sole traders, and charities in England, Scotland, and Wales. And businesses need to meet certain criteria to qualify for a Green Business Fund. So those are listed on the slide there. We need businesses to have no more than 250 employees, and have either an annual turnover not in excess of 25.9 million, or an annual balance sheet not in excess of 12.9 million. And in addition to that, the qualifying SME cannot be more than 25% owned by an entity that doesn't meet the above criteria. So you'll find that criteria is very similar to the UK government definition of what is an SME. Just to also point out, because we do get questions on this every now and then, that we can't support either domestic projects, public sector projects, or any new build projects as well. And the first service that we can offer through Green Business Fund is typically a 2-hour workshop that we would deliver, and these are hosted around the UK. So we have on the slide there, we just listed the next 3 that are coming up in the spring. So we've got workshops in Birmingham, Swansea, and Northampton. but I think there is a longer list on the Carbon Trust website. So if you did want to go on there and have a look at where your next nearest workshop is, please do just have a look at the website. And what these workshops are really targeted at is giving businesses a sort of 2-hour introduction to the different opportunities that are typically available to them. So that would be hosted by one of our consultants here at the Carbon Trust, and they will deliver a workshop that allows you to, first of all, understand the energy consumption of your business, and then also look at normally with a focus on low to zero cost measures that could be implemented to try and reduce the energy spend of the business. The next two services that we offer through Green Business Fund, and the ones that we'll have more of an in-depth look at when we come on to the case studies, are the opportunity assessments and the implementation advice. So opportunity assessments, first of all, are essentially energy audits that we can deliver either remotely via telephone and email, or by actually sending one of our consultants to site. So depending on both the size of the site and complexity, and also the energy spend at that site, we would assign one of our consultants either to work with you remotely on that, or to actually come to site and to meet you, and to have a look at what equipment you have on site. So as I say, that tends to be delivered by one of our engineers on the technical delivery team. And the aim of the opportunity assessments is to come up with normally 3 costed energy saving recommendations specific to your business. And for each of those, present the next steps to actually go ahead and implement those recommendations. So it is quite a tailored approach, as I say, specific to the business and to the site. And that's available to SMEs within England, Scotland, and Wales. The implementation advice service can be a follow-on from an opportunity assessment, or it can be an independent service, maybe for businesses where you've maybe already done some internal auditing, or you just have a good idea of where the key opportunities lie to try and reduce the energy spend of the business. So this is where, again, you would be assigned one of our consultants who would work with you to essentially go out to tender for a project that you wanted to have a look at. So that consultant would help you to put together the tender documents. So normally a request for proposals and a return proposal template, and also a covering letter that we could send out to Carbon Trust accredited suppliers, who we would invite to come to site to have a look at the existing equipment and other site considerations, and then put forward both a proposal and a quotation for the project that you were looking to implement. This service differs slightly from other Green Business Fund services in that we are actually allowed to offer this to some non-SMEs as well. So as long as the business has less than 1,000 employees, we can normally offer the implementation advice service as well. I mentioned within the implementation advice service that we would look to engage with Carbon Trust accredited suppliers. The reason that would be our preference is because suppliers accredited by the Carbon Trust have to go through a due diligence process with us. So this is where we ask them to demonstrate a proven track record of delivering high quality energy efficiency or renewable energy projects, where they would essentially have to apply to us and then take part in a technical interview and various other checks that we would carry out on the company as well. So we do have, as I say, an accredited supplier scheme, which is a market-leading accreditation scheme for suppliers and installers of energy efficiency or renewable energy products. And only suppliers who can meet or exceed the criteria set by the Carbon Trust are actually allowed to achieve that accredited supplier status and to market themselves as Carbon Trust accredited suppliers as well. We have on the Carbon Trust website something called the Green Business Directory. So this is essentially a searchable directory of these accredited suppliers, which is aimed really at businesses who are looking to implement energy efficiency or renewable energy projects. And businesses can actually go onto the Carbon Trust website and search based on some criteria for accredited suppliers who are local to them. So if you did want to independently just look for suppliers, as I say, via the Carbon Trust website, we have the Green Business Directory. At the same time, if you are maybe just looking for more of a managed tender process, then come to us for the implementation advice service, and we can actually get in touch with those suppliers for you. So just to highlight the supplier network there, and a couple of different ways of getting in touch with suppliers who may be able to support you in your project. A couple of other services that are available through Green Business Fund, just to run through. So the first one being our Virtual Energy Manager service. So this is essentially a series of structured workshops or modules that would again be delivered by one of our consultants. And this is really for businesses who specifically want to look at the energy management processes that they have or don't have within the business already, and look at improvements that could be made to those. So it is a fairly flexible service where we can either deliver, I think there are 6 structured modules on energy management, or we can maybe look at just one area in particular. So to give an example, if we had a business who came to us looking to implement an energy policy, for example, then maybe we could just look at supporting the business to implement that. So as I say, fairly flexible, and again, something that will be delivered by one of our consultants here. 2 other things that I mentioned at the very beginning are that we also have delivered a series of technical webinars through Green Business Fund. So these cover a range of different technologies. For example, there's a lighting one, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. I think we've also delivered technical webinars that are specific to certain sectors. So we've done one for schools. We recently did one that I mentioned for the sports and leisure sector, where we tend to see relatively high energy spends. So again, I would suggest just having a look at the Carbon Trust website to see if any of those are of interest. And also we have a number of Carbon Trust publications that we've made available through Green Business Fund. So there's one we've highlighted there, again on HVAC, one on lighting, one for suppliers, and carbon footprinting and renewable energy as well. Very final service to run through on Green Business Fund is that we have recently been developing a number of apps that we made available to SMEs. So these are tools essentially designed to help businesses with the first steps in measuring, managing, and reducing both carbon emissions and energy costs, and are tools that include step-by-step instructions and guidelines to take you through this. So these are just apps that can be downloaded and used either via tablets or smartphones, or even via web browsers as well. So we developed one to help SMEs to carry out a carbon footprinting exercise, and that's actually based on the internationally recognised greenhouse gas protocol guidance. We've also developed a tool to help SMEs to benchmark their energy use. So that could be benchmarking either against specific technologies or processes, or even just within your sector or within your building type, to allow you to compare the consumption on site versus some key benchmarks. And there's also an app there that we've designed to help businesses to look at the business case for upgrading lighting to LED lighting as well. So that's something that's come out of LED lighting tending to be one of the most common recommendations that we make during energy audits, essentially down to the relatively low capital cost and fairly quick paybacks that can be achieved through that recommendation. And also just to flag that there is a fleet upgrade tool that is currently in development as well. So the case studies that we're about to have a look at, as I've mentioned, are all of opportunity assessments or implementation advice projects that we've delivered through the Green Business Fund, and are good examples of just some of the hundreds of businesses that we've supported since early 2016 to try and reduce their energy costs. The average energy cost saving identified through these opportunity assessments currently stands at £8,230, which is equivalent to 89,850 kilowatt hours of energy that could be saved, or 1,432 tons of CO2. So just interesting to note, £8,230, roughly about 7 times the average household energy bill that could potentially be saved on average across the hundreds of sites that we have actually carried out the energy audits on. And the first site that we'll have a look at here is for a business that we supported called ApS Metalpressings. So this was a manufacturing site where they make metal formed components and welded assemblies. And through delivery of an energy audit or opportunity assessment, where one of our engineers actually went to site, met with the client and carried out the opportunity assessment, we identified energy savings of £12,000 a year that could be achieved. This was through implementing 3 key recommendations. So those were to manage energy as a controllable resource, so essentially to improve the standard of energy management at the site, to install an automatic monitoring and targeting system to allow them to increase the control of the energy consumption at site, and also to upgrade the existing factory lighting that they had with LED lighting and some automatic controls. And you can see there, by implementing those three measures, they were looking at a simple payback. A payback just looking at the year one energy costs, not taking into account inflation or any maintenance cost savings, of around 2.7 years. Second case study example is for a company called Elite Plastics. So this was a plastics manufacturing site where, again, we delivered an opportunity assessment and identified savings of £60,000 per year, which could be achieved by, again, managing energy as a controllable resource, replacing existing lighting with LED, and upgrading the old DC motors on the extrusion lines. This energy audit identified the above recommendations, which would result in a saving of around 19% of the existing energy costs. Batton Allen was another manufacturing site where they produce precision metal components. And here again, we carried out an opportunity assessment and identified savings of £12,000 a year. This was achieved by replacing a compressor and improving the control of that compressor, implementing heating, ventilation and air conditioning upgrades, and also installing a solar photovoltaic system on the roof of the building. This one was slightly different in that once we had sent the opportunity assessment report to the client, they actually came back to us pretty quickly, having reviewed the recommendations that we'd made, and told us that they were looking to immediately implement the solar PV recommendation, solar photovoltaics. So they actually went ahead and implemented that project, which was expected to reduce their energy spend by £4,000 a year. And once they had implemented that, they again came back to us and told us that as a next step, they were now looking at the recommendation that we made to review the heating, ventilation and air conditioning strategy at the site. The next case study example, so to move away from the manufacturing sites, was for a business who operate a number of country hotels. So this was Classic Country Hotels, who were looking at achieving energy savings of around £4,700 that had been identified, again, through an opportunity assessment. Here, the recommendations that we made were to improve the standard of energy management by managing energy as a controllable resource, upgrading lighting to LED again with some automatic controls, and upgrading the cellar cooling system as well. And here, by implementing those measures, this business was looking at a simple payback of just under 4 years. Another case study example was Coster and Glover, who are a wholesaler of engineering components. So this was actually a warehousing site where they store the stock. I think there were also some offices within the site as well. This business actually initially attended one of the 2-hour workshops that we delivered, where we introduced businesses to the opportunities that may be available to them. Off the back of attending that workshop, they then came back to us and asked us to carry out an opportunity assessment of this warehouse site. So this was carried out remotely over phone and email, and we identified energy savings of £3,000 a year that could be achieved just by upgrading the lighting in the warehouse to LED. Once we had made that recommendation to them, alongside a couple of others within the opportunity assessment report, Colston Glover then came back to us again and asked us to support them in taking that LED lighting recommendation forward. So we took them through the implementation advice service, where we actually helped them to put together the tender documents, and then went out to competitive tender to 5 Carbon Trust accredited suppliers, who all came back to us with proposals and quotations for that project. And one of our Carbon Trust engineers then, upon receipt of those proposals and quotations, carried out a review of those and made recommendations to Colston Glover via a tender review report, where we essentially made some straightforward comparisons between those different proposals that we had received, and then made recommendations based on those comparisons to Colston Glover in terms of which proposal we thought offered the best value and was most appropriate to the business to take forward. Final case study example that we'll run through this morning is for Young Calibrations. So this was a site where it was essentially a thermal fluid and component testing facility. Again, we carried out an opportunity assessment for the business, where we identified that savings of £7,000 a year could be achieved. Key recommendations here were to increase the capacity of the solar photovoltaic system that they already had installed on site, to look at improving the management of the compressed air system that they have, and also to upgrade the main process boiler as well. All of which was expected to result in a saving of around 12% on the annual energy costs to the business. And Young Calibrations actually came back to us to let us know that they have since implemented the solar PV project that was the #1 recommendation, and this is currently saving them about £3,000 a year. Very finally, on the case study examples, I just wanted to highlight something else before we finish. So in each of the case study examples that we've looked at, what we've done is we've shown what we've called an annual saving, which is essentially the year 1 energy cost saving. And we've also, based on that, shown the simple payback period of the recommendations. The graph that's shown on the slide here was taken from an energy audit that we delivered for a client similar to the ones in the case study examples. And this shows the impact of similar audit recommendations over a 10-year period. So the recommendations here were improved energy management, LED lighting upgrades with automatic controls, and some upgrades to the basic heating controls that they had on site. And what we're showing here is, so the year one saving would allow the business to reduce the annual running cost from £30,000 down to 18,500, so a saving of £11,500 a year in year one. What that doesn't take into account is things like inflation, which we factored into the graph here, and also any maintenance cost savings that would result from these recommendations. So for example, LED lighting is one where maintenance cost savings can actually be quite significant. If you have, say, older fluorescent tube lighting, for example, that you need to employ a maintenance team to be replacing on a monthly or weekly basis, then taking away that cost, both in terms of personnel and also equipment costs, can, as I say, be fairly significant, and is also something that can be factored in when looking at the business case for those upgrades. So here, what we're actually showing the business is over that 10-year period, if they did nothing, then at 4% rate of inflation, the annual energy cost would increase from £30,000 up to over £42,000. If they implemented those measures, that would actually reduce down to £18,500, and over that 10-year period would increase to around £26,000, which is still below the £30,000 that they would have been paying 10 years previous to that. What this graph's quite good at illustrating is the space in between those, in between the business as usual and the energy management scenario lines, is that a total energy saving of around £138,000 could actually be achieved over that 10-year period, taking into account inflation at the current rate as well. So as I say, just wanted to flag with the case study examples, what we've been looking at is year one savings and simple paybacks. But if we are to sort of delve into the business case for a lot of these recommendations, then quite often it can be even more compelling than that. So that's just something to bear in mind. Before we finish up and take any questions that have come through, just wanted to also touch upon a couple of other schemes that we're currently operating in addition to Green Business Fund. So the first one is something called Start to Act. So this is an EU-funded programme to improve efficiency in young SMEs and startups across Europe. So within the UK, this is something that Carbon Trust is delivering. And if you are either a startup or maybe a younger, smaller SME, this might be something that is maybe more applicable than Green Business Fund. So this is a scheme where we can offer 3 visits to your business by one of our consultants. You would also receive a training pack including tips to reduce energy consumption on site, and some easy to use templates and checklists to help you do this. And so this is mainly designed to support businesses in improving the energy management processes and to identify either low or zero cost energy efficiency improvements that could be made. Contact details for that scheme are on the slide there. So if you think this might be useful to you, then I would suggest getting in touch with us either via that email address or just via the Carbon Trust website. We also, on behalf of UK government, actually deliver and manage something called the Energy Technology List. So this differs from our accredited supplier network, which is an accreditation of suppliers and installers' ability to deliver projects. This is a list of equipment instead. So it's a government approved list of energy efficiency equipment, which can be found at the link shown on the slide there. And it lists over 15,000 projects in 57 different technology categories, which have been assessed and have been found to be the most efficient technologies within that category. We also, for LED lighting, we have quite a few, quite a number of LED lighting technologies that meet the criteria for the energy technology list. So LED lighting projects don't tend to be listed on the ETL, but the criteria for achieving that does. So it's worth just speaking to any suppliers of LED lighting just to make sure that they are compliant with the energy technology list criteria as well. And one of the key benefits of the energy technology list just now is that organisations that pay income or corporation tax can actually claim what's called an enhanced capital allowance on the purchase of ETL listed equipment, which essentially means that they can get all of the tax benefit in the year of purchase when they are spending money on ETL listed equipment. So a couple of links on the slide there. I would suggest that if that is of interest, just having a look at the information that's listed via the links shown on there. Via those links as well, there is also quite a lot of information, both for manufacturers and also purchasers of energy efficient equipment, just with a lot more detailed guidance on the scheme and the benefits of that. So as I said at the beginning, that is the main presentation that we wanted to run through this morning. We do, I think, have some time left just now for any questions. So what I'll do is put myself on hold for a couple of minutes and just see if any questions have come through. If we have any, then we can just run through those. But for anyone who needs to jump off the webinar now, thank you very much for your time this morning, and we hope that it has been useful and informative. For anyone staying on, as I say, I'll hop off just now, and I'll be back on in a couple of moments. Okay, so we do have a couple of questions that have come through. So I'll just answer those very quickly. The first one is just asking if support is limited to businesses in the UK. Is the role what is the role of the offices in other areas, for example, South Africa? Are there similar services available to SMEs in South Africa? Um, so the answer to the first part of that question is that Green Business Fund is limited to SMEs within England, Scotland, and Wales. So it's a scheme that has been specifically designed to support SMEs within those parts of the UK. I mentioned earlier we do have an office in South Africa who deliver a number of different schemes. I don't know is the honest answer whether they deliver anything similar to Green Business Fund. What I would suggest is maybe just contacting that office directly via the Carbon Trust website to find out if you are a business based in South Africa, then what services Carbon Trust South Africa has available to you. Second question is asking whether an organisation called Low Carbon Dorset are part of the Carbon Trust. I can confirm they're not. Not an organisation I've personally come across actually, but no, not part of the Carbon Trust. They may well be an organisation who we worked with previously. If you have any specific queries on organisations who are associated with us or who we deliver projects with, then again, please do contact us regarding that. So those were the only two questions that we had come through. If anyone does have any questions at a later date, then I understand Susan will be contacting you all to pass on a copy of the slides, and I think ask for feedback on the webinar as well. So please do feel free to ask any questions then, and I'm sure Susan will forward them on. But for now, again, just like to thank everyone for attending the webinar. And yeah, thank you for your time.